It's crazy. Being a starving artist today is a choice, not a necessary condition of doing creative work. So yeah, it's broken up into 3 parts. First part is mindset. You mentioned Michelangelo. There's a story about Michelangelo where his whole life he was told by his parents and family members that he was noble because he had a last name. Most people in the Renaissance didn't have last names. To have a last name meant you were a noble person. And so this whole time, because he's got this name Buonarroti, did I say that? I said that very Italian-esque.
Yeah, it was nice.
Yes.
It was really nice. Good job.
He was told that he was noble. So he grows up his whole life and goes through his life as an artist, which at the time is kind of a working class profession. It's a blue collar job, manual labor. And he's told, you're a nobleman. And so as a result, he commands the highest commissions. He requires that people take him seriously. He wrote one time in a letter, he said, I was never an artist like one who keeps a shop. Meaning I was never a shopkeeper artist, because a lot of artists kept shops and they'd take their work to the market and they'd sell it, and they were just working class Joes. He said, I was never one of those guys. I worked for popes and princes. Like, I was the real deal. And as a result, he becomes the richest artist of the Renaissance. He had $50 million to his name.
Crazy.
And when I read this story, I thought, this is interesting for a few reasons. One, he's the richest artist of the Renaissance, right? He's also the best, or one of the best. And I think most of us are thinking you can do really good, generous work, or you can focus on the bottom line, right? Like, and once art and money get too close, we say you're a sellout, right? Once you start to monetize, it's impossible that you could create really, really good stuff and make the most money at it. We think there's a trade-off there. Well, clearly there's not necessarily, because he did it. The other thing, the mindset thing, is super interesting, because it turns out he wasn't noble. It turns out years later, historians found out, no, he wasn't a nobleman. And yet, because he thought like it, he became it. And so there's this idea in the book where you believe something, which I believed, okay, I want to be a writer, so I'm gonna call myself a writer. Then you behave as if it's true. I'm gonna act like it. And then you become it. Believe, behave, become. This is important. If you think you're going to starve, you will. And I'm not saying fake it till you make it, but I am saying believe it till you become it.
Can you differentiate? Because I think people would think that means the same thing.
If you're talking about it and not doing it, you're faking it. If you're going to parties and telling all your friends, you're taking pictures of, your great life on Instagram, but you're not doing the stuff to support that, then you're faking it. If you're calling yourself a writer and you're not writing every day, you're a fake.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so that's mindset. Is that our door?
Can we go check?
Yeah, that's weird.
Reason number 247, why you never rent.
It's just like, isn't this someone's house? Like,
Miranda, I can hear. I forgot I stared. Do you mind if I take it? I'm very sorry about that.
She what?
this is the person who lives here.
Just because I need to stare more than water.
She forgot something.
Sorry.
No problem. Oh, that's funny.
Sorry.
Your step stool is not important. Here you go.
Wow.
It's a step
Sometimes
stool.
you just really need a step stool.
Yeah.
This is going to show up on their Airbnb grade.
Okay, so we talked about mindset. Let's do the other 2 M's.
Yeah. So market is the second one. This is the social component, which I talked about. Turns out that creativity in particular is a very social thing. And so in the book I tell a story about Hemingway, how Hemingway didn't really become successful until he moves to Paris and connects with all the other people in that creative scene. And in our world, relationships are really important. And I think with social media, knowing people, truly knowing them, just becomes more and more important. So the idea of joining a scene is, there's basically one of 2 ways to do it. Either you go join an existing scene, you move to New York or LA or Nashville or wherever, and become a part of the environment where people are connecting and helping each other and growing, because it is easier to become more successful where success is already happening than it is to do it yourself. Or create one.
Yeah.
In the book I talk about Hemingway, who went and joined one. But then for every Hemingway in Paris, there is a Bronte sister. And the Brontes were, incredibly influential on the English language as authors, but they lived in the sticks. They lived in the boonies. They lived in this place called Haworth, England. Their father was a minister, basically shut-ins, and he homeschooled them. And there were 3 sisters that, growing up, would share stories with each other, and poems and stuff. And these girls would write novels as teenagers. And when they started sharing their work with one another, they all critiqued each other, became better and better, and later on in life, they helped each other get published and become successful and have some of the most influential works of literature in the English language. The idea that you can become successful as a solitary genius is a myth.
Yeah.
Every great creative genius, from Hemingway to Steve Jobs to Twyla Tharp, who was a choreographer and dancer, they're all borrowing from their influences around them and learning from each other and using relationships to become successful.
So let's pause for a second, because we all know those people